What's up, everybody? It's the Digital World Podcast, and here we have a tornado
France Road. It's
that
near
is
you.
moving
I am.
through New Orleans and Louisiana. You can't really see it here, so I'm gonna go to this next video and go ahead and play it. But look at this thing; it's just devastating, and that's gonna cause a lot of damage to the streets. So our prayers are with those people. But in these times, folks, we're living in different times, and if you're a Christian, you know that a lot of these things are indicative of the times, and so we need to pray for those people affected, and hopefully they stay safe. Okay, moving on here. Federal Reserve raised interest rates by 0.5%. Here is Jerome Powell telling you.
Cumulative tightening of monetary policy and the lags with which monetary policy affects economic activity and inflation, the committee decided to raise interest rates by 50 basis points today, a step down from the 75 basis point pace seen over the previous 4 meetings. Of course, 50 basis points is still a historically large increase, and we still have some ways to go. As shown in the SEP, the median projection for the appropriate level of the federal funds rate is 5.1% at the end of next year, a half percentage point higher than projected in September.
So, folks, they're going to keep doing this. Who knows how long they're going to keep hiking, but they've made it very clear that there's still a long ways to go, and they want to get to that average of 2%. Not get inflation back down to 2%, but get down to an average. So they can keep these interest rate hikes elevated for a period of time. And they want, essentially, if you kind of read between the lines of what they're telling you, they want you to lose your job because that's going to kill demand because you won't be able to have a job to spend. And so things are going to get a lot more painful than they currently are right now. Here you see Lynn saying during the global financial crisis, bank deposits kept going up while bank loans decreased. Currently, lending is still going up while deposits decrease. So living in a different situation. See that here depicted in the chart. Here is a graph of the 1980 base CPI. And if we were to use those calculations, CPI would be around 15%, not the 7% that they're telling you. And that reminds me of the markets. Last year when we had 7.1%, it was like, oh man, this is bad, this is horrible. And now we get 7.1% and the markets are liking it. Folks, that's a lot. That's really high. Here we see the Red Cross. They're warning that an enormous level of suffering awaits the world. And if you read this article, it tells you that there's a lot of humanitarian needs that are just increasing, specifically hunger. That we're going to see hunger in the next year in levels that the world hasn't seen in a very long time. And so they're warning you of what's coming. But it's up to you to prepare the best you can. Here we see, these are the 3 waves of inflation that I am always referring to of the 70s. And it was hard. The first wave, you can imagine. It seemed like it was going to go away and then it was over. And then the second wave came. And then that went away. And then the third wave. And each subsequent wave hit harder. And I expect this one to be a lot harder than it was then. Because of the percentage of debt to GDP is a lot higher. I think it's about 3-4 times higher than it was back then. And so we're dealing with a lot of different factors. And so that remains to be seen where we're going to end up. But we're at the beginning of this. Make no mistake about it. And to end it here, obviously here's the inflation rates, right, for all the countries. You see the U.S. is 7.1%. But to end it here, this is a very good clip. And I've played it a few times on this channel, but it's always a good refresher.
Krishna, Mr. President, I rise again, I'm afraid, to make the same old hoary speech that I've been making here for several years, and that is, it is my opinion that you do not really understand the concept of banking. All the banks are broke, Bank Santander, Deutsche Bank, Royal Bank of Scotland, they're all broke. And why are they broke? It isn't an act of God. It isn't some sort of tsunami. They're broke because we have a system called fractional reserve banking, which means that banks can lend money that they don't actually have. It's a criminal scandal, and it's been going on for too long. To add to that problem, you have moral hazard, a very significant moral hazard from the political sphere. And most of the problem starts in politics and central banks, which are part of the same political system. We have counterfeiting, sometimes called quantitative easing, but counterfeiting by any other name. The artificial printing of money, which if any ordinary person did, they'd go to prison for a very long time. And yet governments and central banks do it all the time. Central banks repress the amount of interest that rates are, so we don't have the real cost of money. And yet we blame the real retail banks for manipulating LIBOR. The sheer effrontery of this is quite astonishing. It's central banks that manipulate interest rates, Commissioner. And plus, underneath all this, we talk loosely, in a rather cavalier fashion, do we not, about deposit guarantees. So when banks go broke through their own incompetence and chicanery, the taxpayer picks up the tab. It's theft from the taxpayer. And until we start sending bankers, and I include central bankers and politicians, to prison for this outrage, it will continue.
And there you have it. You see what he calls chicanery that's going on. And folks, it's true. They're able to get by with all these different things. But if the ordinary individual were to do it, they'd go to jail for a long time. So the standards, right, that are applied. But anyways, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe to the channel. It's the Digital World Podcast, and I'll see you in the next episode.